Chapter 21. They are the protagonists. Highlight the key points. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yiyu's brow furrowed as the handsome young man approached. By Ruoshi's brow mirrored his. It wasn't that Mu Zhian wasn't welcome, but his arrival was poorly timed. Master Mu, you must have overheard what was happening. Any thoughts on this? Yiyu's dark eyes fixed on Mu Zhian, their depths unreadable. He'd simmered down from his initial anger. He'd been thrilled when Bai Ruoshi invited him to the Bai mansion, only to receive, essentially, a Dear John letter. The humiliation stung. He'd always treated her well, so why invite him here to dump him? She'd never hinted at wanting to end the engagement before, and her attitude had never been so cold. But ever since she'd gotten close to Mu Zhian, everything had changed. He suspected she wanted to ditch him because she had her eye on Mu Zhian. Now, he wanted to hear Mu Zhian justify her actions. No thoughts, really, but I understand Miss Bai, Mu Zhian said with a smile. Yiyu's frown deepened. He stared at Mu Zhian, saying nothing. Before we get too far, let's clear something up, Mu Zhian continued. You and Miss Bai aren't married, so there's no divorce to be had. You're simply agreeing to her request to break off the engagement. Yiyu's frown tightened. Did you come here just to split hairs, Master Mu? Mu Zhian shook his head, still smiling. Master Yi, let me ask you something. Do you honestly believe Miss Bai invited you here today to humiliate you by ending the engagement? Yiyu stared at Mu Zhian's easy smile, his silence answering the question. He wasn't sure where Mu Zhian was going with this. So, if she went to the Yi family and handed you the Dear John letter there, would you feel humiliated then, too? Mu Zhian pressed. Yiyu paused, then nodded. Of course. Then what could she possibly do to avoid humiliating you? Mu Zhian countered. So, any way you slice it, ending the engagement is wrong. Then why end it at all? Yiyu started to speak, but Mu Zhian's words had him turned around. He fell silent again. After a moment, he asked, so you think breaking off the engagement is the right thing to do, Master Mu? Breaking an engagement is, in itself, not ideal. That's obvious. Mu Zhian strolled over to Bai Ruoshi's side, glancing at her complicated expression. However, Miss Bai never agreed to this arrangement in the first place. It was a childhood betrothal, decided by her elders. Now she wants to pursue her own happiness. What's wrong with that? Yiyu was silent. He felt Mu Zhian was twisting things, but he couldn't find a solid argument against it. The families arranged the marriage without consulting either of them. Now that she's grown, she's saying she doesn't want it. Is that wrong? From Yiyu's perspective, some might call it excessive, but from her perspective, she's simply rejecting a future she never wanted. What's so bad about that? Mu Zhian continued. Has Miss Bai ever led you to believe that she cares for you? Yiyu's gaze shifted to Bai Ruoshi. The elegant woman in white looked up, her tone icy. I have never cared for Mr. Yi, not even for a moment. The simple statement hit Yiyu hard. His composure cracked, and he stumbled back a step. He'd given this fiancée the cold shoulder more than once. He'd always treated Bai Ruoshi as his future wife, but she'd never reciprocated. Her attitude had been consistently cold. At first, Yiyu had assumed she treated all men her age this way, but now, it didn't seem so. Her demeanor toward Mu Zhian was noticeably different. Even now, as Mu Zhian stood in the yard, Bai Ruoshi glanced at him far more often. Ending the engagement now will be a loss for the Yi family, Yiyu said coldly. If I married you, I would be sacrificing Miss Bai's future happiness. I can make Ruoshi happy. Yiyu blurted out. You can't force someone to be happy, no matter how hard you try, Mu Zhian replied calmly. Master Yi, you keep saying that Miss Bai's decision is a slap in your face, and the face of the Yi family. But it's just a breakup. As long as you explain the situation and show that the two parties aren't a match, nobody's going to gossip that much. Frankly, the Bai family's star has fallen, and they're not much stronger than the Yi family now. Nobody's going to think the Bai family strong-armed the Yi family into agreeing to anything, so how can the Yi family lose face over this? You're just mad that your ego got bruised when you got dumped. Yiyu snapped his head up, staring at Mu Zhian. Master Mu, she may be doing this to me now, but she might do the same to you later. Then I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, Master Yi, Mu Zhian said with a smile. Anything else? I have plans with Ruoshi. If not, Master Yi, I'll see you around. Turning to the woman behind him, Mu Zhian smiled. Miss Bai, can we talk later? Bai Ruoshi lowered her gaze and gave a soft The coldness she'd shown Yi Yu was nowhere to be seen. Then let's head inside, Mu Zhian suggested, walking toward the main hall. Yi Yu watched them go, his fists clenched. He glared at Mu Zhian's back. Young Master Mu, are you willing to compete with me? Bai Ruoshi frowned, clearly annoyed, and started to speak, but Mu Zhian gently took her cold, soft hand, silencing her. He glanced sideways at Yi Yu, smiling. I'm good, thanks. Yi Yu's mouth hung open. Rage simmered within him, with no outlet. He's getting anxious. Mu Zhian thought for a moment, then chuckled. Okay, how about a private contest in Dragon Head Forest in 2 days? Does that work for you, Master Yi? Bai Ruoshi gasped and turned to Mu Zhian. You don't have to agree to this. It's fine, I'll handle it myself. Mu Zhian raised a hand to quiet her. Across from them, Yi Yu's eyes blazed with renewed fire. He nodded. Fine. Dragon Head Forest in 2 days, it is. He ripped up the Dear John letter, turned to Bai Ruoshi, a hint of anger in his eyes. Miss Bai, you'll regret this. Once he'd defeated Mu Zhian and demonstrated his talent, she'd realize who she was truly meant to be with. Even as he said this, the sight of Mu Zhian gently holding Bai Ruoshi's hand stoked the flames of jealousy. He turned and stalked away. Mu Zhian watched him go, an amused smile playing on his lips. Clearly, the guy was desperate. He thought about it. It's kind of funny. Does he really think he's the hero? Mu Zhian chuckled at the interface only he could see, emblazoned with the word supporting role in stark black and red. Something's off here. This Yi Yu is just a nouveau riche who got lucky with a cheat code. His behavior doesn't really fit the profile of a protagonist known for his patience, but no point in dwelling on it. After dealing with Yi Yu, this supporting role interface should become protagonist, right? Master Mu, did you want to speak with me? The soft, clear voice pulled Mu Zhian out of his thoughts. He nodded, glancing at the hall in the courtyard. Is Mrs. Bai not at home? Bai Ruoshi nodded slightly, her brow furrowed. Were you hoping to see my mother? Mu Zhian shook his head, smiling. Just wanted to confirm something. Confusion clouded Bai Ruoshi's eyes. Mu Zhian continued, actually, I was hoping Miss Bai would accompany me back to the Mu residence. Bai Ruoshi hesitated. For what purpose? To show you something interesting. Mu Zhian turned to look at the puzzled Bai Ruoshi, his voice soft. But you should be prepared for anything. Chapter 22 Jiejiejie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Miss, and Master Mu, heading out. The servants on guard duty outside the mansion couldn't help asking when they saw Mu Zhian escorting Bai Ruoshi out. Normally, servants like them wouldn't pry into their master's business, but Yi Yu had just stormed off, clearly upset about something involving Bai Ruoshi, or even Mu Zhian himself. Now, with Mu Zhian taking Miss Bai away, they couldn't help but worry. Bai Ruoshi offered a soft, cool yeah, adding, we need to stop by the Mu family for something. Mu Zhian smiled. Please let Mrs. Bai know that Miss Bai has plans at the Mu family tonight and won't be returning to the Bai mansion. The two servants exchanged glances. Suddenly, there was a hint of understanding in their eyes as they looked at Mu Zhian. Had Miss Bai turned Yi Yu down because of Mu Zhian? Bai Ruoshi turned to Mu Zhian, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. Not going home tonight. Mu Zhian hadn't mentioned that, in the past, Bai Ruoshi would probably be letting her imagination run wild. After all, it's only natural for a girl to have thoughts when staying at a guy's house late at night, but Mu Zhian's behavior lately had put her at ease. He might be interested, but she felt he'd never take advantage of her. That was the impression Bai Ruoshi had. He'd had plenty of opportunities to make a move before, but he hadn't. Lost in thought, Bai Ruoshi watched Mu Zhian open the carriage door. He turned back, saying, come on in, Miss Bai. Snapping back to reality, Bai Bai Ruoshi gave a slight nod and walked to the carriage. A morning breeze caught her white dress. Tall and slender in plain short boots, the fabric clung to her curves. She rested a hand on her chest, bending slightly to enter the carriage. Mu Zhian signaled the driver, and the carriage started off. Bai Ruoshi turned to the young man beside her, waiting for an explanation, but he simply leaned back, cupping his head in his hands and closing his eyes. After a moment of silence, Bai Ruoshi finally asked, "Master Mu, could you at least tell me why you needed me at the Mu family?" Mu Zhian shook his head. "It wouldn't do any good. You wouldn't believe me anyway. Besides, I'm not even sure if the information is accurate. I don't want to spread rumors." The man in black had claimed he saw Bai Yuanfeng at the Gongsun family, but it was only one person's word. The man had told him this to make Mu Zhian distrust the Bai and Gongsun families, hoping to prevent them from joining forces against him. The truth remained to be seen, but the truth would come out soon enough, and right now, all the suspicion pointed to Bai Yuanfeng. Later, at the Mu family, Bai Ruoshi sat drinking morning tea. Looking distracted, a few strands of hair framed her classic features. Dressed in a long white gown, she radiated a cool beauty that could make women jealous. Holding her teacup, she lowered her eyes, gazing blankly at the floor. She was a true beauty, even when lost in thought. Mu Zhian sighed inwardly, sensing the Mu family's eldest son staring. Bai Ruoshi looked up. Meeting his gaze, she didn't flinch, simply asking softly, "Young Master Mu, can't you explain now?" Mu Zhian shook his head. "Just wait until tonight. You'll find out then." Bai Ruoshi frowned. Tonight, that sounded suspicious. Remembering Mu Zhian's intense gaze, she couldn't help but have some fantasies, despite her trust in him. "I have a surprise for you later," Mu Zhian said, then shook his head. "No, maybe shock is a better word. Miss Bai, brace yourself." Bai Ruoshi's beautiful eyes flickered, a puzzled look in them, but Mu Zhian didn't elaborate. He sipped his tea, lost in thought. Seeing this, Bai Ruoshi decided not to press him. Holding her teacup and drinking quietly, he probably wouldn't answer anyway. There was no point in boring herself. After dinner, as evening approached, Tianxian city quieted down. Mu Zhian turned to Bai Ruoshi, who looked tired after a long day, and said, "Miss Bai, let's go." Forcing herself to perk up, Bai Ruoshi looked up, asking, "Go where?" "To our destination, of course. Did you think we were going to my room?" Mu Zhian teased. A light blush rose on Bai Ruoshi's face. She lifted her gaze, her eyes charming, and whispered, "Where's that?" "The Bai mansion," Mu Zhian said. "I'm taking you home." Bai Ruoshi was clearly surprised. Mu Zhian had invited her to the Mu family just to sit around all day, only to take her back at night. Seeing her confused expression, Mu Zhian gently set down his teacup and smiled. "Has Miss Bai ever tried sneaking into her own home at night?" Bai Ruoshi frowned. "Why would I sneak home? That her father wanted her to marry into the Mu family. He'd be fine with her staying here tonight. She had no reason to sneak in." Mu Zhian glanced at the coolly beautiful woman and said softly, "You'll see soon enough." Chapter 23 Women's Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That night, the carriage carrying Mu Zhian rolled through the midnight streets and stopped short of the Bai family's gate. Mu Zhian hopped out and went to Bai Ruoshi's side, held back the curtain, and offered her a hand. In the dim light, Bai Ruoshi eyed him, then took his hand and stepped down. She scanned their surroundings before finally asking, "Master Mu, why are we sneaking into the Bai residence?" This was clearly her family's mansion. Yet Mu Zhian was having her sneak around like a common thief. The whole thing felt bizarre. "Miss Bai, how is your father doing after the attack?" Mu Zhian asked. Bai Ruoshi jumped, surprised that Mu Zhian knew about it. Then she remembered it had been a while since she'd seen her father. With the Mu family's reach in Tianxian city, getting intel wouldn't be tough. She lowered her voice. "My father is in a safe place, recovering, with 2 guards rotating watch." "So, your mother's running the Bai mansion now?" Mu Zhian pressed. Bai Ruoshi hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Which means, since you left, it's just a handful of servants and Mrs. Bai alone in the house, right?" Mu Zhian confirmed. Mr. Mu, what are you getting at? Bai Ruoshi frowned, a knot forming in her stomach. You'll see soon enough, Mu Zhian said, pausing. Maybe not until tomorrow night. He glanced towards the shadows. Meng Ro, this is all you. Bai Ruoshi followed his gaze and spotted a woman they'd picked up along the way. She wore a pretty yellow dress and short boots, looking sharp despite melting into the darkness. If Mu Zhian hadn't spoken, Bai Ruoshi might not have noticed her at all. Don't worry, she's the best at concealing her aura in the refining spirit realm, bar none, Mu Zhian explained. Wei Mengru might not be the strongest fighter he knew, but her abilities were invaluable. The black-robed man's intel had been wrong that day because Wei Mengru was a master of concealment. He hadn't realized that besides the old man, Wei Mengru was always around, her aura masked. That's why Mu Zhian never treated Wei Mengru like just another maid. After all, how could you expect loyalty if you didn't give it yourself? No more than half an hour. After that, I can't promise you two won't be detected, Wei Mengru warned. Serious as hell, Mu Zhian nodded and turned to Bai Ruoshi. Let's go. Bai Ruoshi was confused, but she followed Mu Zhian as he scaled the mansion wall. Without hesitating, she jumped, landing lightly on the wall beside him. Then she turned to Mu Zhian and whispered, Master Mu, what are you planning? Mu Zhian surveyed the scene. The moon cast shadows in the yard, the wind rustled the leaves, looks like there really aren't any servants around, Mu Zhian thought. He looked at Bai Ruoshi and said, wait here. I'll be right back. Before Bai Ruoshi could answer, Mu Zhian had jumped down. If the refining period was about physical strength, the training period was about manipulating qi, the spiritual energy within. With it, anyone could leap across rooftops and scale walls. Too bad I'm not in the refining spirit realm yet. I'd be patrolling the skies on a flying sword right now. Mu Zhian mused with a hint of regret. Even so, he stayed alert, moving quietly through the courtyard, searching for Bai Yuanfeng's room. His eyes quickly landed on the second room in the backyard. Candlelight flickered behind the door, casting the faint silhouette of a woman. Even with Wei Mengru masking his presence, Mu Zhian took extra precautions. He crept forward, reaching the door, and listened intently. Silence. Too bad they don't use paper doors like they did in the old days. I could just poke a hole and peek inside. Mu Zhian frowned, not giving up. He scanned the area and found an open window on the side of the house. He took a steadying breath, quietly approached, and peered inside. His face fell slightly. Bai Yuanfeng was alone, sitting on a couch in a silk nightgown. Without makeup, she looked older, but still undeniably attractive. But even so, she didn't compare to her daughter. Is the black-robed man lying, or is Bai Yuanfeng just being too cautious? Logically, the black-robed man wouldn't risk getting caught in such an obvious lie, which meant Bai Yuanfeng was likely playing it safe. Just as Mu Zhian was thinking this, a hand tapped him gently on the shoulder. His heart leaped into his throat as he whirled around. Bai Ruoshi stood behind him, anger flashing in her eyes, but she kept her voice low. Master Mu, why are you sneaking around my mother's room in the middle of the night? Before she could finish, Mu Zhian felt a chill run down his spine. He clapped a hand over Bai Ruoshi's mouth, pulled her into his arms, and ducked behind the window, pressing her against the wall. Bai Ruoshi's eyes widened, surprised. As she tried to pull away, finally free of Mu Zhian's hand, she started to speak, but then seemed to sense something, her head snapping up toward the sky. In the silent courtyard, a streak of light descended, landing gracefully. As the light faded, a majestic-looking man jumped off a flying sword. Gongsun Xiong. Bai Ruoshi's eyes widened, shock written all over her face. What was Gongsun Xiong doing at her house? But what she found even more unbelievable was that, moments later, the door swung open, and Bai Yuanfeng, smiling, ushered Gongsun Xiong inside. Chapter 24. It's time to meet the parents. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a moment of stunned disbelief, Bai Ruoshi moved as if to peek out the window and see what was happening in the room. Mu Zhian immediately grabbed her hand, shushing her. While Bai Yuanfeng's skills were nothing to worry about, Gongsun Xiong was a different story. Even if he let his guard down after seeing Bai Yuanfeng, and Wei Mengru helped mask their presence, there was still a chance he could detect them. Despite these precautions, Mu Zhian could still clearly hear the sounds of intimacy coming from the room. The sounds were enough to confirm what was happening. There was no need for further proof. Mu Zhian saw by Ruoshi's face pale and knew the emotional blow was devastating. He whispered her name a couple of times, but she didn't respond. Seeing her distress, Mu Zhian scooped her up into his arms, turned, and quietly left the Bai residence. Only when they were in the carriage and she heard the horse's hooves on the ground did Bai Ruoshi seem to snap out of it. She turned to look at the late-night street scenes flashing by, her expression complicated. It all made sense now. No wonder Bai Yuanfeng had been reluctant to hand over the Tongmai pills, and no wonder her father was attacked and seriously injured on the way home. None of this was an accident, it was a carefully laid plan, the result of Bai Yuanfeng's collaboration with the Gongsun family. Master Mu, why do you think my mother did this? Bai Ruoshi asked softly. She looked at the young man beside her. What does she gain from destroying the Bai family? Mu Zhian sighed. Nothing. But you can never predict what people will do. If we could understand some people's motives with logic, there wouldn't be so many shocking crimes. You just can't fathom how some people's minds work. The scariest thing isn't a monster, it's the human heart. Especially a woman's heart. After a long silence, Bai Ruoshi seemed to steel herself. She looked up at Mu Zhian. Master Mu, if you can save the Bai family, I'll give you the Tongmai pills tomorrow. Mu Zhian glanced at her and sighed. Miss Bai, do you really think the Tongmai pills are still in the Bai family's hands? Bai Ruoshi was stunned. After a long silence, she listened to the carriage moving forward, a helpless smile slowly forming on her face. She pursed her pale lips, forced a smile, and said softly, You're right. Anyway, thank you, Master Mu, for today. She asked the driver to stop, then lifted the curtain to leave. Where are you going? Mu Zhian asked. Bai Ruoshi paused as she was about to step out. I have to deal with the Bai family's problems. With her father gravely injured and her mother the one who betrayed them, she was the only one left to pick up the pieces. Don't you need my help? Mu Zhian asked. Bai Ruoshi shook her head. Master Mu isn't part of the Bai family, so there's no reason for you to help. Besides, you've already done so much. I'll thank you properly another day. She's still got some fire in her. Watching the slender figure of the girl about to jump out of the carriage, Mu Zhian reached out and grabbed her soft hand, gently pulling her back in. Bai Ruoshi turned to look at Mu Zhian, confused. Her once vibrant face now seemed drained of color, less dazzling and more fragile. Her slightly wet eyes stared straight at him, making him want to hold her close and comfort her. Mu Zhian told the driver to keep going. As the carriage slowly moved again, he looked back at Bai Ruoshi. Did you want to say something else, Master Mu? Bai Ruoshi asked, then lowered her head. The hem of her white skirt swayed gently as the carriage moved, revealing a glimpse of her pale calves. Mu Zhian's goal was the Tongmai pills, but now they were likely with the Gongsun family. The Bai family now had nothing Mu Zhian wanted. Miss Bai, what would you say is our relationship now? Mu Zhian asked. Bai Ruoshi was slightly taken aback. She'd never thought about it. Their relationship had evolved from the dog chasing the goddess to something more equal. Over the past couple of days, there seemed to be an unspoken connection between them. Definitely not Taoist partners, but more than just friends, right? Mu Zhian gently took Bai Ruoshi's slightly cool and soft hand. After a moment of silence, her face flushed slightly, and she softly said, Yeah, but didn't pull away, letting him hold her delicate hand. Your father is only seriously injured, not disabled. Mu Zhian looked at the girl, who seemed a little weak and helpless. I think our relationship is at the point where we could almost meet the parents. Parents? Bai Ruoshi hesitated, then, as if understanding dawned, slowly raised her head and looked at Mu Zhian. You want to meet my father? Mu Zhian nodded. Compared to the Gongsun family, who'd been scheming for so long, he now felt the Bai family was more trustworthy. Chapter 25 Liangyi Sect 5K, 1/2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After asking where Bai's father was, Mu Zhian headed back to the Mu family to get Mr. Ren, who was chilling with some tea in the hall. the old man didn't hesitate. When he heard Mu Zhian was in a bind, he went with him straight to Bai's father's hideout. To Mu Zhian's surprise, Bai Ruoshi revealed that her father wasn't holed up at the Bai family mansion, but in a secret place a few miles west of the city gates. Now, as Mu Zhian sat in the carriage on the way there, he was deep in thought, brow furrowed. He hadn't been able to shake something when they left, and now he was even more suspicious. Sensing the young man's mood shift, Bai Ruoshi softly asked, "What's on your mind, Master Mu?" Mu Zhian responded, "Miss Bai, when's the last time you saw your father?" "I visited him yesterday. He looked a lot better. Should be back on his feet in a month or two," Bai Ruoshi replied, a shadow crossing her face. She seemed weighed down, still reeling from her mother's betrayal of the Bai family. Her once bright eyes looked a little dull. "That's strange," Mu Zhian murmured, brow furrowing slightly, as Bai Ruoshi watched him, puzzled. Mu Zhian continued, "If your mother was selling out the Bai family, why wouldn't she just take out Uncle Bai while she was at it? Why let him recover?" Bai Ruoshi whispered, "Even injured, Dad's still too tough for someone at the Qi training level to handle." "What if the Gongsun family was involved?" Mu Zhian countered. "If the Gongsuns knew Dad's route back to the city and ambushed him, why wouldn't they just finish the job?" Bai Ruoshi looked stunned. "Yeah. Knowing where Dad was, why wouldn't Mom just send people to clean up the mess? Could it be because of old times? Or was there something else going on?" While Bai Ruoshi was lost in thought, Mu Zhian shook his head gently. "Forget it. No point in guessing. Let's get the full story from your dad." Before they knew it, they'd arrived at a secluded cabin. Bai Ruoshi stepped out of the carriage, turning to the others. "Give me a minute. There's a ward outside. I need to let the guards know we're here." With graceful little steps, Bai Ruoshi approached the cabin. After a moment, she opened the door and gave them a nod. Inside, a pale man lay in bed. He looked rough, with a messy beard. Anyone who didn't know he was Bai Ruoshi's father would wonder how such a beautiful daughter came from him. Mu Zhian greeted him respectfully. "Uncle." Bai's father propped himself up, and the guards rushed to help him sit against the headboard. "Have a seat. Don't stand on ceremony," Bai's father said, his voice still strong despite his disheveled appearance. Mu Zhian nodded, settling into a wooden chair and getting straight to the point. "Uncle, Ruoshi and I are here because there's something we need to discuss." Hearing this, Bai Ruoshi subconsciously gripped her white dress, her eyes filled with conflicting emotions. The atmosphere grew heavy. Mu Zhian glanced at the two guards. "You two can leave," Bai's father instructed, knowing what Mu Zhian was thinking. To avoid airing dirty laundry, Mu Zhian also asked the old man and Wei Mengru to step out of the cabin. Once they were alone, Mu Zhian hesitated, then began, "This involves my wife." Bai's father seemed surprised. "Your wife?" Mu Zhian nodded, then laid out what he'd seen. Bai Ruoshi, standing nearby, nodded, confirming his story. Bai's father was silent for a long time, then ripped off the gauze on his chest. His muscles were well defined, and despite his pale face, he still looked powerful. He seemed less like a spirit cultivator and more like a hardened warrior. He looked at Mu Zhian, a smile playing on his lips. "To be honest, my wife doesn't exactly like me, but she'd never betray the Bai family. She's always run things, got all the power and money. What would she gain from selling us out?" Bai Ruoshi felt a flicker of hope. She looked at her father, asking, "Then why would Mom be with Gongsun Xiong?" Bai's father was silent again, then sighed. "She doesn't like either of us. She didn't want to marry into the Bai family in the first place. I thought that years of marriage might have changed things, but..." He trailed off with another heavy sigh. "Then who does she like?" Bai Ruoshi couldn't help but ask. Bai's father didn't answer, just looked up at the ceiling, his eyes filled with a nostalgic expression. If he had a smoke, Mu Zhian thought, he'd offer Bai's father one and listen to his story. "I knew from the start she wanted more than just being the Bai family's wife," Bai's father said. "More like what?" Mu Zhian pressed. Bai's father looked at Mu Zhian meaningfully. "Power and money." Mu Zhian was puzzled at first, but then, piecing everything together, his expression froze, he stared at Bai's father, whispering, "She wants to swallow up the three families." Bai's father had just said that Bai Yuanfeng didn't want to marry into the Bai family. So, she tried to get rid of Bai's father, then she planned to marry her daughter into the Mu family. Because the Mu family was so well guarded, Bai Yuanfeng didn't have a chance to infiltrate them at first. But if Bai Ruoxi married in, it would be like planting a spy, then, she could play one house against another. No. Considering the Mu family's strength, she'd probably have them do the dirty work. If Mu Zhian hadn't had that stroke of memory, he would have happily gone along with Bai Ruoxi's request. After the wedding, the Mu family would naturally side with the Beis, and Mu Zhian would be Bai Yuanfeng's son-in-law. After that, if she played her cards right, the Mu family would slowly fall under her control. This Bai's father knows the whole plan. He's on a whole other level. Mu Zhian said, "So, uncle's injury. Was that part of the plan too?" Bai's father grinned. "If I'd known, I wouldn't have taken that route back to the city. I figured she'd target Gongsun Xiong, not me." Mu Zhian. The Bai family was being squeezed by the two families, barely hanging on. It seemed like it wasn't just because they were outnumbered. Without Bai Yuanfeng, this old guy wouldn't know how to play the game. Mu Zhian felt a headache coming on. "Uncle, I brought Mr. Ren along. If you're up for it, we can have him take a look at your injuries now." Mu Zhian decided to change the subject. If he kept talking about this, he was going to get a brain aneurysm. Bai's father studied the young man. "Why are you willing to help me?" Mu Zhian thought for a moment. "For love." Bai Ruoxi blushed, stealing a glance at Mu Zhian, but Bai's father frowned. "I had a deal with that boorish old man from the Yi family. If I had a son, we'd be like brothers. If I had a daughter, our families would unite in marriage. You want me to break that agreement?" "It's forced arrangements like that that led to Mrs. Bai's betrayal," Mu Zhian pointed out. Bai Yuanfeng was forced into marrying into the Bai family, so this whole mess happened. It was kind of ironic that the person who was forced to marry was now forcing his daughter into an engagement. At that moment, Bai Ruoxi suddenly said, "Dad, I've called off the engagement." Bai's father's eyes widened, and for a moment, his boorish facade seemed to crack, replaced by a terrifying force. He looked at his daughter's clear face, anger rising. "You." Bai Ruoxi stood firm. She looked at her father. "I don't like you." Faced with his daughter's defiance, Bai's father's aura subsided, and he sighed. "Even if the Yi family boy is kind of useless now, I see something in him. He's got staying power. He'll get somewhere." He looked at his daughter, worry etched on his face. "Ruoxi might regret this someday. It's got nothing to do with what Yi achieves. I just can't stand him," Bai Ruoxi said softly. "Some people just rubbed you the wrong way from the start, so no matter what they did, no matter how hard they tried, they'd always just get your nerves. The more Yi tried to win her over, the more Bai Ruoxi hated him. Most women didn't like guys who were desperate." Seeing Bai Ruoxi's unwavering gaze, Bai's father relented. "I won't push it. I screwed up when I arranged your marriage without even asking how you felt." He turned to Mu Zhian. "Sorry for dragging you into this, nephew. If my injury heals faster, the Mu family will have my thanks." He knew that the Mu family's Mr. Ren was a renowned doctor. With his help, he might recover sooner. Soon after, an old man with a gray beard entered. Bai's father gave a slight nod. "Mr. Ren, it's been a while." The old man simply grunted, then took his pulse. Mu Zhian stood by, waiting quietly. After a while, the old man opened his eyes. Under the scrutiny of the group, he shook his head. "I can make a pill to help him recover in a month. But a full recovery in a short amount of time is unlikely." Mu Zhian couldn't hide his disappointment. 1 month. In a month, the Bai family could be done for, plus, the showdown with Yi was in 2 days. The Gongsun family was on the fence, and those black-robed guys were lurking around. He'd hoped to have Bai's father and the Mu family's 2 spiritual cultivators as backup in case things went south, but given the circumstances, he'd have to find another plan. Just then, the old man sighed again. "Actually, if we could get a hold of one ingredient, brother Bai could recover in a day, easy. Bai Ruashi's eyes lit up. What ingredient, Mr. Ren? I can send people to find it. The old man shook his head. It's called Beast King Vine. It only grows where immortal energy is thickest. You can only find it at the Liangyi Sect. Liangyi Sect. Their brief hope was dashed, and they fell silent. That was as good as saying it was impossible. Mu Zhian shook his head. Tianxian City was miles from Liangyi Sect. And Liangyi Sect didn't let outsiders in, let alone let them forage for herbs. After saying goodbye to Bai's father and heading back to the Mu residence, Mu Zhian told a maid to show Bai Ruashi to the guest room. Today had been rough on her. She needed rest. Mu Zhian was also tired and about to head back to his room. Passing by the study, he paused, glancing in. There seemed to be a faint light flickering inside. Mu Zhian opened the door. In the dim room, 3 paper cranes emitting a faint white light were resting by the window. They were filled with fairy spirit. He'd been so busy he'd almost forgotten to reply. Mu Zhian remembered. He walked in, lit a candle, and unfolded the first 2 cranes. The first letter was the usual complaints about whether he should run away from home, hoping Mu Zhian could give him some advice. The second letter asked if he'd been busy and why he hadn't replied. Clearly, not getting a response had gotten the writer worked up. For someone to be so into online dating and wait by the paper crane every day, their life must be pretty dull. Mu Zhian opened the 3rd crane. This letter was different. Less one-sided complaining, more concern. Mu Zhian smiled, amused. He sat down, picked up a brush, and wrote down his feelings for the letter writer. He didn't get too sappy. After he was done, Mu Zhian folded the letter and tossed it out the window. Once you get familiar, it's time to get a little flirty, otherwise, you might end up in the friend zone. Speaking of which, where does this paper crane fly to? Watching the paper crane take to the sky, Mu Zhian wondered. He climbed out the window, following close behind, but the paper crane kept getting faster. At first, Mu Zhian managed to keep up, but gradually, he lost steam and could only watch as the paper crane flew higher and higher above Xuancheng. He hadn't reached the point where he could fly with a sword, so Mu Zhian was stuck watching the paper crane disappear. Then, someone tapped him on the shoulder. Mu Zhian turned to see Wei Mengru, looking gorgeous as ever, standing on a flying sword. She said softly, "Get on." The cool beauty was wearing a yellow dress, a thin ribbon accentuating her waist. She had a stunning figure. Even in boots, she was almost as tall as Mu Zhian. Wei Mengru had noticed him leaving the Mu mansion and had been secretly following, only revealing herself now. Sister Mengru was the best. Mu Zhian jumped onto the flying sword without hesitation, wrapping his arms around Wei Mengru's slim waist, feeling her soft body against him, soft and fragrant. Even if he didn't catch the paper crane, it was worth it. Mu Zhian sighed. Wei Mengru tensed, shooting him a cold glare. Mu Zhian explained, "Just making sure I don't fall." Wei Mengru said coldly, "One wrong move, and I'll toss you off." She flicked her fingers, and the flying sword shot forward, catching up to the paper crane. Time passed quietly, with only the wind to break the silence. Before he knew it, nearly 2 hours had passed, and Mu Zhian's attention had shifted from Wei Mengru's soft, fragrant, and really big body to the paper crane dancing in front of them. He had a growing feeling that something was off. He'd thought the letter writer was a girl from Tianxian City or a neighboring one. Now, he wasn't so sure. What if they were from farther away? As Mu Zhian pondered, white mist swirled around them, and rich spiritual energy filled the air. Just taking a breath made him feel good, but before Mu Zhian could enjoy it, he caught sight of faint peaks ahead. Looking up, he saw the paper crane flying toward a mountain, flapping its paper wings. Mu Zhian was silent for a moment. Then, he whispered. "This paper crane, it's coming from the Liangyi Sect." Chapter 26 Sister Fairy, I don't want to work hard anymore. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are 9 peaks in the Liangyi Sect, each overseen by a leader and teeming with disciples. The 10th peak is the most precipitous and treacherous of them all. Its summit is saturated with mystical energy. A pavilion is nestled against the mountain's back, facing a vibrant flower field. A lush bamboo forest, seemingly reaching for the heavens, completes the scene. Rumor has it that the 10th peak is where the Liangyi Sect leader retreats to meditate and cultivate, and that this uniquely elegant pavilion was built just for her. It's called a rumor because most disciples have never laid eyes on this legendary leader. Only her closest disciples can approach this secluded sanctuary, but it's not just a rumor. Inside the simple, pristine pavilion, a veiled woman sits, seemingly lost in thought. She wears a moon-white dress that accentuates her curves. Her eyes are cold and pure, like a lotus blossom, beautiful but unapproachable. Even with the veil, her graceful form hints at an alluring beauty. "Master, I have a report," Lan Mulyen says softly, her voice as cool as her demeanor. A woman in a long black dress stands nearby. The night wind pushes the fabric against her full chest, and her hair is simply held back with a hairpin. Despite her plain attire, she exudes a magnificent aura. When the sect leader doesn't respond, Lan Mulyen sighs softly, breaking the silence. "Never mind. It's nothing important. I won't bother you." Guess he won't leave the sect before he enters the realm of returning to the virtual world. Turning to leave, Lan Mulyen is stopped by the woman's voice. "You want to go down the mountain to relax? Does it have something to do with those paper cranes you've been getting?" Lan Mulyen freezes and slowly turns to face her master. "Master, you know about that?" she asks softly. Her voice remains calm, but with a hint of emotion she rarely displays. I didn't expect Master to even know about the paper cranes. It should be such a trivial matter for her. Paper cranes flying to the back mountain every day. Even a fool would notice, the sect leader says, turning her head. Her long black hair flows down her back, and her classic features are striking. She sits at a tea table, crossing her slender legs and propping her chin on her hand as she looks at her disciple. Her slender fingers tap the table as she considers something. Her eyes lack any commanding presence. Is it a potential boyfriend? The sect leader asks. Lan Mulyen shakes her head. I sent out a paper crane once, and someone picked it up. We've exchanged a few words in our spare time, but he's not a potential match. But you haven't received any paper cranes in the last few days, have you? Lan Mulyen purses her lips, lowering her eyes. Maybe he's busy and hasn't had time to reply. Suddenly, she senses something and turns toward the pavilion's entrance. She can feel her magic weapon returning. Looks like your paper crane is back, the sect leader says, glancing casually in that direction. A natural furnace. If I become a sect disciple in the future, I'm afraid I will be beaten to death by those female elders. The sect leader shakes her head, brews tea, picks up a black chess piece, and begins a solitary game. After Lan Mulyen leaves the pavilion, she raises her hand and gathers a cloud from the sky. The cloud comes to life beneath her feet. She steps onto it and floats toward the paper crane. As she passes over a mountain peak, all the disciples below stop training to watch her. Look, it's senior sister Lan. She reached the peak of God refining at 23, and she's only one step away from returning to the void to become a land god. Senior sister Lan's talent is incredible. She's also beautiful, isn't she? I'd shorten my life by 20 or 30 years to marry her, one disciple sighs. Shoo, keep it down. Do you want to get beat up? Another whispers. He realizes that his words have drawn unfriendly stares from around him. He glances at his senior brother gratefully, then stares at the beautiful woman as she floats away, sighing. He knows such a woman is destined to be beyond his reach. This paper crane came from the Liangyi Sect. So the person I've been writing to is the daughter of a leader. Mu Zhian, riding his flying sword, looks up at the distant peak and secretly speculates. He can't deny the possibility, because the paper crane's tone suggests she grew up in a comfortable environment. He hadn't expected she would be a disciple of the Liangyi Sect, and from her letters, she seems to hold a high position within the sect. Will I have a chance to meet her during the next sect assessment? Also, Sister Mengru said. The man in black robe reacted to the paper crane. Could he have some connection with the Liangyi Sect? Mu Zhian shakes his head. Sister Mengru, the Liangyi Sect is just ahead. Let's head back. He knows it's too dangerous to enter the Liangyi Sect before becoming a disciple. Wei Mengru nods, turning her flying sword around, but then she senses something. She stops and turns her head slightly. Mu Zhian looks around as well. In the distance, a woman in a white dress is floating toward them on a cloud. Mu Zhian isn't surprised. They're near the foot of the Liangyi Sect, so being noticed is expected. Since they didn't enter the sect, they should be fine if they explain. As he thinks this, the woman arrives in front of them. A veil hides her beautiful face, and her figure is slim and curved, revealing an exceptional and unattainable beauty. Mu Zhian is captivated. Then, his eyes narrow as he sees the paper crane in her hand. Paper crane, star. He realizes something he had missed. He feels a bit strange and glances at the woman. He's unsure if she's the one. The girl in the letters sounded lively, but this woman exudes an icy aura. There's no way these two are the same. Wei Mengru speaks. We were just passing through. We didn't step into the sect. Lan Mulyan says softly, not one to waste words. She had only come to retrieve her paper crane and noticed someone outside the sect. She glances at Wei Mengru, *. She's followed by a maid from the god-refining realm. This young man must be the son of some rich family, *. He seems talented too, *. But he's only practicing the Qi realm. He has no talent but likes to be lazy, *. Lan Mulyan shakes her head, losing interest in them. If you two have nothing else, please leave. She turns to leave on her cloud. Mu Zhian blurts out, senior sister, since you're going down the mountain anyway, why not run away from home? Lan Mulyan freezes. She slowly turns her head, and her cold eyes show a hint of surprise. Mu Zhian sees her reaction and knows he was right. She is the owner of the paper crane. Chapter 27. Thanks for the invitation. I am in Liangyi Sect. I just got off the flying sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lan Mulyan stopped, glancing back at the young man behind her. Surprise flickered in her icy blue eyes. The veil couldn't hide her refined beauty. She softly asked, "It's you?" Their exchange was brief and cryptic. Anyone overhearing wouldn't have understood, but Mu Zhian did. Lan Mulyan's reaction to the phrase running away from home confirmed everything. Still, he was surprised. Even he hadn't suspected the paper crane's owner was a disciple of the Liangyi Sect, and apparently, a fairly high-ranking one. Lan Mulyan continued, "You two must be from a big family in a nearby city, right? What brings you here?" The Liangyi Sect was close to the Sea of World, a legendary ocean. It was so vast, even experienced monks couldn't cross it in days of uninterrupted flight. It seemed unlikely anyone would intentionally travel there. Mu Zhian decided on honesty. Actually, we came to the Liangyi Sect looking for medicinal herbs. We heard the Beast King vine only grows near here. You want the Beast King vine? Lan Mulyan raised an eyebrow. What for? It's used to make elixirs for the critically ill. Is someone in your family seriously sick? Mu Zhian sighed. It's a long story, but the Beast King vine is very important to me. He looked up at her. Do you know where I can find it? I'm not your senior sister, Lan Mulyan said, her voice clear and cool. Her white dress made her seem unapproachable, like a fairy in a painting. She added, and I don't know where to find the Beast King vine. Wei Mengru, who was listening, suggested, let's head back. Wait. Mu Zhian lowered his voice to the maid. Then, he smiled and said, I know a friend who's been arguing with her family for weeks. She keeps saying she wants to leave, but never actually does anything. Does that sound familiar? Lan Mulyan idly twirled a strand of hair, lowered her gaze, and said, doesn't ring a bell. After a pause, she glanced at him and sighed. What's your name, young sir? Mu Zhian. Lan Mulyan nodded slightly. Mr. Mu, I might be able to get you the Beast King vine. But have you been busy lately? She's calling me out for not replying. Mu Zhian thought, he sighed. Actually, a close uncle has been seriously ill these past few days. I've been trying to help him. I only just got home tonight, and the first thing I did was check for a letter from the paper crane writer. Wei Mengru rolled her eyes. He's been busy, alright, but he definitely just forgot. No reply for days. His uncle's ill. Lan Mulyan's eyes flickered. She closed her eyes briefly, seeming to search the ring on her finger, and pulled out a small, ornate box, *. She wears a ring, ***, and a fancy one, ***. Mu Zhian mused. Storage rings were valuable, but the Mu family had connections in Tianxian City. Getting one wouldn't be hard, however. The fact that she'd searched the ring for so long suggested it contained a lot of treasures. Lan Mulyan tossed the box to Mu Zhian. He opened it, inhaling a potent medicinal scent. Inside, was a root as thick as a teacup, marked with patterns that vaguely resembled the word king. It was the Beast King vine. Mu Zhian looked up. Lan Mulyan's expression was still cool. "No need to thank me," she said. "Just give me one of the elixirs you make with it." This large Beast King vine could produce a whole batch of elixirs. This is practically a freebie. Mu Zhian was certain. This was a rich girl. Fairy sister. I don't want to work hard anymore. Mu Zhian nodded. "Thank you." Lan Mulyan nodded. "Which city are you from?" "Tianxian City." Lan Mulyan said softly, "If you have nothing else to do, go back. Lingering around too long could make you look suspicious." Mu Zhian smiled. "We're leaving now. Want to come back to Tianxian City with us?" Lan Mulyan hesitated, then shook her head. "Not for a few days. By the way, what's your name?" Mu Zhian asked suddenly. Lan Mulyan glanced at him, a slight smile on her face for the first time. "You'll find out next time we meet." Her voice was as clear as ice breaking, and behind the veil, a faint smile played in her eyes. Lan Mulyan lifted her moon-white skirt, stepped onto cloud-embroidered boots, and gracefully walked away. She was tall and well-proportioned. Even without seeing her face, her slender back was captivating. It was clear she was a stunning beauty. If a high-ranking Liangyi Sect disciple went down the mountain to Tianxian City, it would cause a sensation. Watching Lan Mulyan disappear, Mu Zhian sighed, then retracted his gaze, sat on the flying sword, and smiled. "Let's go back, Mengru." Wei Mengru nodded, raised her fingertips, and steered the flying sword toward Tianxian City. The night wind whipped through her hair, the fabric clinging to her skin, highlighting her figure. "What's the plan now?" Wei Mengru asked suddenly. Mu Zhian looked up at her, his fingers stroking the small box. He smiled. "With the Beast King vine, we can easily get the other materials at auction. We have the setting, the characters, and the events. All we have to do is let the actors take the stage, and watch them play their parts, right?" Chapter 28, Suppressing Bandits. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Yi family, deep into the night, everyone slept soundly except for a single room lit by candlelight. Inside, a handsome young man slowly opened his dark eyes. He regulated the spiritual energy flowing within him, then took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. A look of pure joy lit up his eyes as he whispered, "Peak of essence refinement." In just a few months, he'd gone from being a good-for-nothing to reaching the peak of essence refinement. Yi Yu's talent stunned everyone in the clan. His cousins, parents, and even the elders now saw him in a completely new light, but this time, he wouldn't let it go to his head like before. His time as a waste had tempered his once impetuous heart, making him incredibly calm. Yet, the moment he thought of Mu Zhian, a violent edge crept back in. I have to beat Mu Zhian. Only then will my future be truly limitless. Yi Yu quietly clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with determination. Even if I can't reach the Qi training realm in 2 days, my hidden weapon is enough to win, even against someone stronger than me. Sure, Mu Zhian was in the Qi training realm, but he'd been indulging in women for so long that he'd become a shell of himself. He might be at the Qi training level, but his actual strength was probably closer to mine. Just you wait, Ruoshi, Yi Yu thought. After crushing Mu Zhian in Dragonhead Forest in 2 days, Ruoshi would regret her decision that day. He replayed the memory of being rejected at the Bai mansion and the way Ruoshi looked at Mu Zhian. After working so hard to win her over, only to be treated with cold indifference, jealousy gnawed at him. Even if he pretended to be cool on the outside, it was hard to swallow the bitter pill of seeing his fiancée fawning over that playboy, but that was all about to change. With this, Tianxian City was only the beginning. Yi Yu stared at the wisp of heavenly qi forming in his hand. his eyes shining with confidence. According to the old-timer in his head, the heavenly chi was a fragment left behind when a super-powerful immortal level being died. Each heavenly chi had different abilities. The one in his hand could constantly refine and absorb surrounding spiritual energy, and, if he activated it, it would speed up the process, sucking in even more spiritual energy for his own use. There was no doubt that this heavenly chi was the reason he was back in the Yi family's good graces. Too bad the old guy was still asleep. He wouldn't wake up until Yi reached the chi training realm. If he were awake, a scrub like Mu Zhian would be a piece of cake. Yi calmed his thoughts, sat cross-legged at the edge of the bed, pulled out the heavenly chi, closed his eyes, and returned to his cultivation. Meanwhile, Mu Zhian had just returned to the Mu residence late that night. He entrusted the Beast King Vine to Wei Mengru for safekeeping and asked her to give it to Mr. Ren the next day. With that done, Mu Zhian was about to head back to his room when he saw Bai Ruoshi standing in the courtyard's corridor, bathed in moonlight. Her fair skin seemed to glow with silver, framing her beautiful face. The sadness in her eyes added to her delicate appeal. In just a few days, the Bai family had suffered a massive blow. Her mother was suspected of betrayal, her father was seriously injured, and now she couldn't even go home. The weight of it all was pressing down on her, leaving her physically and mentally exhausted, unable to sleep in an unfamiliar bed. The Bai family used to be so powerful. Miss Bai was treated like a celebrity on the streets. Sure, she was still popular now, but the catty women were gossiping behind her back. When the family was rich, her aloofness was called elegance, but now, they whispered that she was stuck up and pretentious. Jealousy would always be around. Seeing someone else succeed was worse than failing yourself. The beauty in the white dress gazed up at the hazy moon, thinking about everything that had happened, and sighed. Suddenly, she felt a warmth on her back. She turned to see a light blue fur coat draped over her shoulders. Master Mu. Bai Ruoshi almost gasped. The young man stood smiling behind her. It's chilly. You should keep warm when you're out here. Bai Ruoshi looked at Mu Zhian, her expression complex. Thank you. She hesitated. But once you're in the chi training stage, you can easily ward off the cold. Before she could finish, Mu Zhian gently placed a finger on her lips, smiling. Don't say that right now. It ruins the mood. Bai Ruoshi fell silent. Normally, she would have bantered, but she was too weighed down tonight to joke. I found the Beast King Vine, Mu Zhian said suddenly. Bai Ruoshi mumbled an absent-minded Then, her eyes widened. She slowly looked up at the smiling young man and said, Master Mu, what did you just say? That the Beast King Vine was a rare herb only found near the Liangyi Sect's mountain gate. She knew Mu Zhian had gone out, but she hadn't expected him to actually look for it, and he'd found it. I gave it to Sister Meng Ro. I'll go to the auction house tomorrow to get the other ingredients. Then I can make the elixir to heal Uncle Bai. Mu Zhian continued. Bai Ruoshi gaped, still processing everything. Finally, she snapped out of it, looking up at him with a trace of hope. Her chest rose proudly under the fabric, bright and moving under the moonlight. Mu Zhian sighed at the girl's delicate face. Do you think I'd lie to you about something like this? Bai Ruoshi was quiet for a long time, then smiled softly. You're right. I'm sorry. I lost it there for a minute. It would be pointless for Mu Zhian to lie. The truth would come out tomorrow. Go back and rest. We need to get to the auction house early tomorrow to get the other stuff, Mu Zhian said, gently putting his hand on her shoulder. Bai Ruoshi suppressed her joy and nodded. She turned and walked slowly toward a room in the courtyard. At the door, she paused, turned back to Mu Zhian, and said sincerely, Thank you. I will repay you for this, Ruoshi promises. Believe me, Master Mu, Bai Ruoshi said earnestly. Mu Zhian just smiled and nodded. He believed her. Last time in the carriage, her offer had been perfunctory. This time, she was serious. That had to do with what she'd been through and the time she'd spent with Mu Zhian. At that moment, the outcome of his fight with Yi Yu in 2 days didn't matter anymore. Yi Yu had already lost. No matter what he did, he might still be the main character, but Bai Ruoshi wasn't the heroine anymore. The real focus now wasn't Yi Yu, but taking down the black-robed bandit. After Bai Ruoshi left, Mu Zhian turned back to his room. A twisted shadow emerged from the Darkness, it was a spy from the Mu family. Mu Zhian turned to him. What is it? Master, the elder wants to see you in the secret room, the spy said respectfully. Chapter 29, Eating for Free 4K, 1/2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the biggest player in Tianxian City, the Mu family's got way more than just one strong fighter up front. Besides Wei Mengru and Ren Lao who everyone sees, Mu Zhian's parents are also top-tier cultivators. They just took off from Tianxian City a while back on some business, leaving the whole Mu operation in Ren Lao's hands, but lately, Mu Zhian's been the one really running things. Mostly because the old man's trying to toughen him up. Even though Mu Zhian used to be a screw-up, he seems to have grown up a lot recently, and even if Mu Zhian can't handle everything, he's still got backup plans to clean up any mess. One of the Mu family's real secret weapons is those elders holed up in seclusion, practicing. Even Mu Zhian's parents have to call them elder when they see them. With a spy leading the way, Mu Zhian followed a winding, dark path and ended up in a secret room before he knew it. Meanwhile, the spy had already slipped away from the door. One thing you gotta remember as a spy is don't know too much. That if you wanna live long, you gotta keep that in mind. Man, this place gives me the creeps. Mu Zhian said, all respectful. Great elder, what's so important you had to call me out this late? Mu Zhian's never even met this great elder, not since he was a kid. They say he's so old, he sleeps all the time and never gets involved in the family's business. Most people in the clan figured the great elder had already kicked the bucket, so what could have possibly gotten to someone like that? Even Mu Zhian was itching to know. Just then, an old voice came from the secret room. Solid foundation, but weak energy. You've been hanging out at the pleasure houses, haven't you? How does this great elder know about the pleasure houses? Mu Zhian bowed respectfully and said, Greetings, great elder. The old voice came again, heard from the spies about what's been happening in Tianxian City. You've been helping folks out, shows you got good character. But you gotta watch out when you're up against Yu. Getting to the top tier so fast, that kid's got a bright future. Top tier. Mu Zhian blinked, surprised. He's already that strong. That he remembered Wei Mengru saying just a few days ago that Yu was only a 7th level cultivator. With that thing he's got, a few days to the top tier, that's enough. The elder in the secret room sighed. Mu Zhian's eyes narrowed. Is there something inside Yu that's speeding up his training? Not sure if the Yi kid's got something special, but I know what that black-robed guy who snuck into the Mu place a few days ago is after. The old man's voice was slow and steady, heavenly energy. Mu Zhian's face went still. No wonder Yu was leveling up so fast. If it's heavenly energy, that'd explain it. Mu Zhian had read about it in ancient books and knew what kind of treasure it was, but he was still confused. Great elder, if that's the case, why didn't the black-robed guy just take the heavenly energy from Yu himself? Why ask us for help? Is he scared of the big shots in Tianxian City, or did he make some kind of promise? Mu Zhian guessed. You're quick on the uptake. The great elder sounded impressed. In the world of cultivation, monks can't make promises lightly. Break and you might get zapped by lightning. But if you get someone else to do it, no lightning strike. The black-robed guy never laid a hand on Yu. Most likely, he made some kind of vow. Does the great elder want me to stop the black-robed guy from taking the heavenly energy, or do you want me to take his place? Mu Zhian asked suddenly. I'm just giving you a heads up. What you do with it, up to you. But Yu's not gonna stay small time forever. If you can, try not to make an enemy out of him. Heavenly energy's a rare treasure, only chooses the chosen one with the best luck, and best luck means you can jump off a cliff and still find treasure, survive anything, and even though you're plain, you always attract girls from every angle. Mu Zhian frowned. Too late for that. Young folks don't hold grudges when they grow up. Making friends with Yu shouldn't be too hard. The elder said seriously. His fiancée's staying over at our place. Mu Zhian said flatly, Great elder. This kid really bagged the Bai family's golden girl. The elder in the stone door went quiet for a minute, then sighed. That's that. You're heading out of the Mu place tonight, off to the Liangyi Sect. Yeah. Mu Zhian said. Old man Ren told me you need Beast King Vine to treat the Bai family head. That stuff's only at the Liangyi Sect. Without the Bai family helping, you gotta watch your back. And focus on your training. When you get to Liangyi Sect, find yourself a few partners. You can find any medicine you need there. Basically, the elder was telling Mu Zhian to focus on cultivation, not getting distracted by women, but Mu Zhian hesitated. I already got the Beast King Vine. Feeling the silence in the secret room, Mu Zhian explained. Met a fairy lady outside the Liangyi Sect gate. She gave me a Beast King Vine and said I could pay her back with a batch of elixirs. The old man in the stone door was quiet for a long time, then said slowly, good to use outside help, but don't forget to improve yourself. I know, but you don't know I was born with a bum stomach. Mu Zhian said casually, so he had to sponge off others. A faint sigh came from the secret room. Get out of here. Dot's so talented, but wants to live off someone else. How could the Mu family's firstborn turn out like this? The old man in the secret room shook his head. He's got some of my charm from when I was younger. Not far from the heart of Tianxian City stood a tall building, all decked out in a classic, elegant style. It had 5 big characters on it, Chenxi Auction House. It was the biggest auction house in Tianxian City, and also part of the Chenxi Chamber of Commerce's empire. The next morning, Mu Zhian was in the hall behind the auction house, invited by Fei Ying, the Chenxi Chamber of Commerce's top auctioneer. Fei Ying was sitting next to Mu Zhian in a tea chair. Her red dress showed off her super hot waist and curves. She had one leg crossed over the other, and her red slippers were swinging back and forth. She had an amazing body, and a beauty mark under her right eye made her look even more mature and alluring. A lot of stuff at the auction house sold for crazy prices because some guys were trying to make her smile or get her attention, but so far, nobody had managed to win her over. Master Mu, what are you looking to buy this time? I've got a VIP booth all ready for you. I'll have my guys take you there later. Fei Ying smiled, her eyes locked on Mu Zhian. Mu Zhian used to be one of those guys trying to make a beauty smile. He'd make a name for himself at the auction and buy a bunch of useless stuff. Auctioneers like Fei Ying loved guys like Mu Zhian, so they treat him special. Some auctioneers even bent over backward to keep those customers happy. Fei Ying didn't need to do that, though. She was good at her job. Mu Zhian pulled out a note he'd prepped and put it on the table. Not hitting the auction house today. Just need Sister Fei Ying to get me 3 sets of the herbs on this list. Fei Ying picked up the note and glanced at it. These herbs weren't anything special, so it wouldn't be too hard to get them. Alright, I'll have someone get them ready right away. Fei Ying nodded, then, with a glint in her eye, she smiled at Mu Zhian. Really not gonna hit the auction for a bit? I can get you a special discount. She put her hand on the table, leaned in, and gave Mu Zhian a look. Mu Zhian looked up and felt like he was being overwhelmed. Yeah, overwhelmed in every way. Cheongsam really shows off a woman's figure. Mu Zhian put his arms around her waist, gave her a look, and said with a smile, if that's the discount you're talking about, I'm all in. Never thought she'd get flirted with, but Fei Ying didn't change her expression. She just gave Mu Zhian a smile. Not the place. Let go. Someone sees, it'll look bad. Mu Zhian smiled. You think I'm worried about my rep? That he gave her an even tighter hug. Finally, a blush crept onto Fei Ying's face. She glared at Mu Zhian. Little pervert, let go. Mu Zhian let go and slowly poured himself a cup of tea. Fei Ying took a couple steps back, then gave the kid drinking tea a look. Then, she narrowed her eyes. Compared to before, this kid seemed different. Maybe that rumor about Mu Zhian standing up for justice was true. The story about Mu Zhian stopping Gongsun Zan from humiliating a woman had spread all over Tianxian City. Some people doubted it. Even when the woman herself said it was true, they still didn't believe it, couldn't do anything about it. Mu Zhian's reputation as a bad boy was set in stone. They were more likely to believe pigs could fly. Fei Ying was one of them, because Mu Zhian used to look at her with lust in his eyes. Fei Ying figured it was good enough that the Mu family's kid didn't join Gongsun Zan in humiliating the maid, let alone stop him, but judging from Mu Zhian's actions today, the rumor might be true. Even though Mu Zhian was getting handsy, he seemed way more confident and natural, not like the sleazeball he used to be, and that confident thing. That's what women dig, she thought about it, but it wasn't a good time to chat or try to figure out what was up with this kid. Fei Ying knew exactly what to do, and when, she pulled herself together. Wait here, I'll have someone get the herbs for you. Mu Zhian nodded. Cool. Then, he watched the woman sashay away and said, oh yeah, has President Huang been around? President. Fei Ying stopped, turned, looked at the kid, and asked, you need something from our president? Figured he'd be here. Mu Zhian asked. Fei Ying nodded. President did come in today, said he was waiting for an important guest. Mu Zhian smiled. Then go get your president and tell him the important guest is here. Fei Ying didn't believe it. She figured he was joking, gave him a look, and smiled. Don't mess with me, I can't just bother the president. Wait here, I'll bring the herbs later. Mu Zhian put down the teacup gently. I'm serious, Sister Fei. Just tell President Huang I'm here. Whether he comes or not, up to him. Fei Ying looked at the kid a couple more times, he wasn't joking. So, the important guest was really the Mu family kid? Well, if he said so, might as well go tell the president. Fei Ying put on a charming smile. Alright, I'll go tell him, but I can't promise he'll come. Mu Zhian smiled and nodded, watching Fei Ying disappear. He wasn't worried President Huang wouldn't show up. President Huang was a smart guy, he'd come. The Gongsun family sent thugs, the Mu family would also send thugs to deal with the black-robed guy. The Dawn Chamber of Commerce, even if it didn't send thugs, had no reason to sit still, right? Dealing with demons costs money, and the Mu family wasn't paying for it. The Gongsun family shouldn't pay either. The Dawn Chamber of Commerce was the perfect fit to foot the bill. Chapter 30 Transaction 4K, 1/2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a side room, the head of the Dawn Chamber of Commerce sat relaxed in a chair. Dressed in opulent finery, his face was etched with the stories of a full life as he leisurely prepared tea. Han, who's this VIP you're expecting? I need to get to the auction, and Manners waiting, a beautiful woman murmured, massaging his shoulders. Has anyone ever stood you up before? There was a touch of annoyance in her voice. She knew her husband placed high value on this VIP, hence their early arrival at the auction house, yet, nearly an hour had passed, and the important guest was still a no-show. Hearing this, Mr. Huang stroked his beard, a smile playing on his lips. I didn't make an appointment. Huh, the beautiful woman looked at him, puzzled. Then how do you know he's coming? He'll be here. It's business, Mr. Huang chuckled. If he doesn't show, it'll be a real problem. The beautiful woman couldn't help but worry. Is this deal that important? Mr. Huang nodded, serious now. Critical, absolutely critical. If he doesn't come, I'll make a pile of money for nothing, and that'll make me uneasy. Get paid for nothing, but it makes you uneasy. The beautiful woman repeated, confused. Mr. Huang tapped the table lightly with a jade-ringed finger, smiling. There's no such thing as free money. This windfall might mean I'll have to shell out even more later. Nothing's truly free, right? The beautiful woman seemed to understand. Then, tentatively, she said, Han, it's been over an hour, and the auction's about to kick off. If I don't go, Manners gonna be mad. Let her be mad. You spoil that girl rotten. If it keeps up, she'll get burned someday. Mr. Huang frowned. His tone was disapproving, but his face softened as he thought of his eccentric daughter. All right, go find Manner. If she doesn't show later, I'll try to visit her myself in the next couple of days. Master Huang had no sons, only a daughter, the apple of his and his wife's eye. They had indulged her since she was a little girl, leading to her quirky ways. The beautiful woman nodded and left the room. Soon after, Fei Ying, in a red cheongsam, entered the room respectfully. Sir, the auction's starting. Mr. Huang toyed with 2 smooth gemstone balls in his hand, nodding. I know, but you usually handle this. No need to ask me. Casually, he added, anything else? The eldest son of the Mu family wants to see you, says he's the VIP you were waiting for. Fei Ying paused, glancing at Mr. Huang's unreadable face. Shall I turn him away? No, you run the auction. Mr. Huang set down the gemstone balls, stroking his beard with a smile. For VIPs, best to meet them in person. Gotta show sincerity. Fei Ying looked surprised, staring at Mr. Huang, then, recalling what the young master of the Mu family had just said, she was taken aback. So, the VIP Mr. Huang was waiting for was the eldest Mu son. Fei Ying's fingertips lightly touched her lips, her eyes gleaming. Mr. Huang walked into the side room and saw the young man drinking tea. Mu Zhian looked up and smiled, Uncle Huang. Mr. Huang smiled, nodding as he sat across from him. The maid poured him tea, then stepped aside. He gestured for the other servants to leave the room. Then, he slowly sipped his tea and sighed. Nephew Mu, I've been tossing and turning lately. Mu Zhian said with concern, if you're not sleeping well, I can have Mr. Ren make you some sleeping pills. Thank Mr. Ren for me in advance. Mr. Huang chuckled, then, he sighed again. Thing is, what would really help me sleep isn't pills, it's you. Me? Mr. Huang nodded. I've been worried you'd think of me as an outsider, that's why I haven't been sleeping. Mu Zhian smiled. Never. I've always considered you like family, that's why I came to you today. He cut to the chase. You must have heard about the guy in black robes. As long as he's in Tianxian City, we can't rest easy. Mr. Huang nodded. You're right, we have to get rid of him. Mr. Huang's tone shifted. But the Dawn Chamber of Commerce is new, still finding its feet. I can't do much to help. But if you need anything, just ask, and I'll find a way. Smart guy, Mu Zhian thought. Actually, I just asked Sister Fei Ying about some herbs, some of the ingredients needed to deal with the black robe when the time comes. Mr. Huang waved his hand. Those herbs are on me. Plus, I'll set aside some gold to help fund the efforts. Mu Zhian shook his head. Gold's not necessary. But I do need some spirit stones. He glanced at the Chamber of Commerce head. If gold and silver are like cash, spirit stones are the world's silver certificates. Unlike gold and silver, these stones can be immediately absorbed and turned into spiritual energy, so, for cultivators, these spirit stones are more precious than anything. Of course, gold and silver has its uses. At least the masses only recognize gold, silver, and jewels. Mr. Huang's eyes flickered as he thought. Spirit stones, how many are you thinking? 50,000, Mu Zhian suggested. Even disciples of major sects only get 2,000 or 3,000 spirit stones a month. So, according to Mu Zhian's guess, Huang's resources shouldn't exceed 50,000, but Mr. Huang shook his head. That's not enough. He looked at Mu Zhian seriously. I'll give you 100,000. Mu Zhian blinked in surprise. He didn't understand the Chamber of Commerce head. He didn't haggle, he doubled it. He shook his head. The guy in black isn't worth that much. But you are. Mr. Huang put down his cup, smiling. You should know I'm a businessman. I'm not interested in power, just making a living. As for your dealings with the Gongsun or by families, I'm not interested. I won't interfere. Meaning, I'll pay what I need to, but don't drag me into your messes later. I just want to make money in peace. Mu Zhian understood. I don't get something, Mu Zhian said. If you don't want to be involved, why help the Gongsun family against the Bai family? Mr. Huang shook his head. I never used any force against them. In our business, that's called a commercial war. So, Mr. Huang didn't send anyone to attack them. At least, on the surface, the Dawn Chamber of Commerce only undermined their market in Tianxian City, Mu Zhian thought. I'll have the spirit stone sent to your family later. I hope you can put them to good use, Mr. Huang said with a smile. You're a wise man, Mu Zhian said honestly. Mr. Huang laughed, putting down his cup. And you are smart man too. They chatted for a while, then Mr. Huang changed his tone. The auction's still going on. If you want, you could take a look. Fei Ying is hosting today. He knew Mu Zhian once had feelings for Fei Ying, but he didn't want to offend the auctioneer. Fei Ying could easily get a job at another auction house, plus, because of some powers behind her, Mr. Huang couldn't get revenge if she jumped ship. Merchants are all about self-interest. If they come for someone, they'll have to consider whether they'll ultimately be worse off, same with the spirit stones, and same with Fei Ying. Sure, why not? Mu Zhian nodded. Mr. Huang smiled, saying, but be careful, don't upset Fei Ying too much. Otherwise, I can't help you. Fei Ying does have a sister, after all, a disciple of the Liangyi Sect, and supposedly, she's been promoted to inner circle. Liangyi Sect, just being associated with them is enough to make people tread lightly. The elders wouldn't go around bullying people, but you have to remember you have connections. If you mess with Fei Ying, you might be ruffling a lot of feathers. Mr. Huang knew that. Mu Zhian smiled. I know. He knew it better than anyone. Killing someone is usually a good way to make enemies. Killing someone creates a father, and killing that father could bring in a grandfather, great-grandfather, or even a great-great-grandfather. Even in the immortal world, people have to be polite. The protagonists who kill people and get away with it do so because they're the chosen ones. Generally speaking, if the difference between you is too vast, how do you hope to be able to kill someone and escape? Led by a maid, Mu Zhian went to the auction and sat in the box that had been prepared. Compared to the bustling venue, this space was more private and comfortable, but as soon as he sat, his eyes fell on the attendees outside. He saw an old friend among them, Yiyu. What a coincidence. Mu Zhian smiled. Am I just destined to butt heads with this guy? That even if it was chance, it felt like fate was doing everything it could to put Yiyu on top. At the front of the room, the charming Fei Ying looked around and said in a soft voice. The item up for bid is unique. It's said to be a fragment of a weapon once wielded by a hero of the old days. While it may look rusty now, perhaps someone could find a way to turn it into something special. Mu Zhian looked carefully at the item. It was a simple bronze piece with complex patterns, but it looked worn. The crowd immediately lost interest. If it weren't for Fei Ying, someone would have shouted, give us our money back. No one came to the auction to see junk. Starting bid, 100 spirit stones. After Fei Ying's announcement, there was silence. No one wanted it. Fei Ying expected as much, and she smiled charmingly at the crowd. They don't understand its value. While it looks like scrap, her subordinates think it might be a fragment of a legendary weapon. 100 stones is basically giving it away. If it could be made part of a weapon, it would be invaluable. Even if it couldn't be made into a weapon, it was still a great collector's item. Too bad nobody knew its worth. 150 spirit stones. A calm voice echoed through the room. Fei Ying was a bit surprised. It's that ye kid. I heard he shot up to the peak of essence refining in just months. A total prodigy. At least someone has taste. The Chongsam beauty's eyes were full of admiration. Yiyu was a little proud to notice Fei Ying's eyes, but he was still calm. But when he stared at the bronze, his eyes burned with hidden desire. The old man inside him had told him this was a good thing. He had to have it. Good thing nobody else knew, or it would be trouble. 150, does anyone bid higher? Fei Ying scanned the crowd, waiting. 150 going once. 500 spirit stones. A voice rang from one of the boxes. The room went silent, and Yiyu turned to look. He couldn't see the face, but he recognized the voice. Mu Zhian. As Mu Zhian made his bid, the atmosphere shifted. People recognized the voice, and looked at Yiyu knowingly. Lots of people knew that Mu Zhian and Yiyu didn't get along, so everyone guessed that Mu Zhian was trying to get back at him. Here he goes again. Yiyu's eyes were angry as he stared at the box, but Mu Zhian didn't care, relaxing with a cup of tea and a massage. He just needed to know one thing, whatever Yiyu wanted, must be good.